Good morning. I had to thank Ian again for bringing our snowman up every week. Some weeks I realized I forgot to thank him for that. So my name is Mary, and I'll be speaking to the children this morning. As again, you're welcome to listen in. These snowmen, I think, are going to last just long enough. I think we have 2 more weeks of snow and snowmen, and we've still got some snow out there. It just keeps coming down. So our Bible character this week that we're going to look at is named Joseph. And when Dean saw that, he said, "Oh, Joseph, I didn't think you were talking about Joseph." I said, "Well, we don't really think of him as Joseph in the Bible because he's always talked about, really, apart from a quick introduction, as Barnabas." And Barnabas is his nickname. I was thinking about nicknames and the way we get our nicknames. Some of us are really good Raptor fans, and we know Fred Van Fleet as Steady Freddy. That's what they call him when they're calling the game. They say Steady Freddy. Why would they call him that? They call him that because of how he behaves as a basketball player. So it's connected to his performance. And when things are kind of going a little crazy with some of the others, they say, we can always count on Steady Freddy. He'll come in and make some baskets. So that's one way we get a nickname. Another is, I read a book years ago now that was written by a man who worked with the homeless. And he met a man on the street, and he called him Green Eyes. And he just referred to him through the whole book and the whole story as Green Eyes because he had that feature of his physical appearance. And so sometimes we get a nickname like that. We get it connected to what we look like. Well, my nickname growing up, in high school, was Spacey Macy. So my last name was Macy, and Spacey rhymed with it, but that wasn't why they gave me the name. And I'll explain it my way. Well, my friends in good fun would call me Spacey Macy because they might be talking about something and my mind was somewhere else and I didn't pick up the details and I wouldn't really look like I was very clued in. So they'd say, "Oh, Spacey Macy." So sometimes we get our nickname by some part of our personality. I think I've outgrown that. I don't know. We won't talk about it, but... So Barnabas got his nickname because his name was Joseph. But he got his nickname because it means son of encouragement. So it's very specific. He obviously was a really encouraging person. We will see in just a few little stories we're going to look at about Barnabas that he liked to include people. He liked new experiences. And obviously he liked to encourage people. So we're going to look for those kind of traits in these quick stories about Barnabas. And then you can think about, does that sound like me a little bit? Did it fall down? What are you pointing to? No, I know that's the other one. It'll come in a second. She's my helper. She's keeping me on my toes. Okay. So the first time we read about Barnabas, Jesus has come, lived, died, resurrected. He's back in heaven. And the Christians are all trying to figure out what they're supposed to do. And they know Jesus has told them, go and tell everybody about me and how to have a relationship with God through believing in me. And we read that Barnabas had a plot of land and he sold it and he gave all the money to those people who were trying to spread the gospel at the very beginning. So we can see that Barnabas, he was willing to enter into some new experiences. He believed in Jesus. And he was encouraging them with this money to get them started on probably, they weren't working full time anymore. Remember, a lot of them were fishermen and different things, and they'd given that up to just go out all the time and talk about Jesus. So he was encouraging that way. The next thing we read about Barnabas is interesting because if you remember, we talked about Saul, who became Paul. Do you remember that? We talked about him. And he was scary to the new Christians because he started out being really, he would round them up and put them in jail because he thought he was doing the right thing for God by doing that. But when he became a Christian, it took a little time for people who were Christians, who also believed in Jesus, to trust him. Because, if you had somebody who used to be rounding everyone up and throwing them in jail, who was just thinking like you were, you might think, I don't know, is this an act or is he really changed? But Barnabas is one of the people who welcomed him in Jerusalem and introduced him to everybody and sort of gave them comfort that he was, in fact, a believer in Jesus. So he was no longer kind of feared by everybody. So Barnabas, thank you, was wanting to include Paul in this new part of the story, and he also encouraged him that way. Then the third thing, which is where we hear most about Barnabas, is that he went on missionary journeys with Paul. He went all kinds of new places to tell people about Jesus because, first of all, he wanted those people to know about Jesus. He also wanted to encourage Paul by going with him. And it's always easier if you have somebody along, right? And he was willing to go into new experiences that way. It wasn't something he'd done before. It was something new. So it shows us that Barnabas liked people, that he wanted to try new things, that he was an encourager. And there was another thing I was going to say about that. But that's it, really. So he was very good at getting on board. He just loved people. Maybe that's who you think you are. I just really love people. I like to get on board with something. I like to encourage people. I like to join something new and exciting. That's kind of who Barnabas was. Well, the one time that we read about that Barnabas kind of got himself in a little bit of trouble, he was with Peter. And I think Peter was probably a pretty strong personality too. And do you remember when God had set aside the Jewish people? Because he said, if I set aside these people, I can do things through them that will tell the whole world who I am. But God always said, way back when he was talking to Abraham, but this salvation will be for the whole world. So God always had in his mind and said clearly, salvation is for everyone, but I'm going to work for a while through just these people. And one of the things that kept them separate was they didn't eat with other people. They kept their group very close because that sort of helped identify who they were. But once Jesus came and he had said in lots of different ways, this is for everybody. All the walls come down. Now we're just one big people. Well, then, Peter found himself, at first he was eating with the people who weren't Jewish. And then something, maybe shifted in his mind. He thought, maybe we're not supposed to do that. So then Peter wasn't eating with the people who weren't Jewish. And then Barnabas came along and Barnabas went, yeah, I guess maybe that's what we're supposed to do. So they made a bad choice. But I think maybe for Barnabas, he didn't want the pain of that awkward conversation, or he didn't want to maybe stand up to Peter and say, I don't think that's right. Well, somebody came and set them straight. Do you want to guess who it was? Paul. Paul comes in and he says, I spoke to them directly and said, that is not right. And they agreed, and they all were friends again eventually. But this is something that whenever you're a personality like Barnabas, you maybe don't want to have pain. You don't want to have some awkward confrontations. And so I just want to encourage you that if you're an encourager, keep encouraging, especially in this time. We all need it, right? And you'll be someone who includes a lot of people in things, and maybe you try new things and you're a positive, happy person who just really enjoys people. But when you find yourself maybe being swept along into something that this doesn't feel right, then try to remember to have the strength to push back on it a little bit, even if there's a little bit of pain in it, and say, I don't think I'm going to go along with that. So that's our lesson from Barnabas for today. And then I'll take whoever's here to go upstairs. We'll go upstairs. Thank you.